Hey everybody. You know, I did a very lengthy, I guess you could say, audio-like podcast on YouTube, that I placed on YouTube. Well, I talked about basically the 30th anniversary of Transformers and my personal experience as a fan over those past 30 years and what I've seen, what I've been part of. And part of that, I talked about Transformers the movie. And I figured, I guess, in celebration of now having the Blu-ray edition, which is actually the Madman .com, the Madman Entertainment Home Entertainment Edition. I've decided I want to kind of reflect a little bit. Sorry about that. I decided I kind of wanted to reflect a little bit on what this movie means to me and how I came to like it and how I came to have enjoyed it. And as my family, mostly my sisters, have seen it so many times, billions of times, millions of times, that I pretty much know every line and every scene, which is probably true. But to get started, I will say this. Like any young fan out there, I got introduced to the movie onto the fact that the movie was coming out, or had been made and was coming out, back in 1986, around July of that year. July, maybe late June of that year. But mostly July, which was kind of ironic because July is the month of my birthday. So, I remember basically when Transformers was aired on KTVU Channel 2 around 4 o'clock, because G.I. Joe would come on at 4:30. I remember watching the shows, and it was during this 2 hour block. Now you got to remember, this is before the days. This is like four years before Disney Afternoon came around. 4 years, 4.5 years before the Disney Afternoon even debuted, or even before it was considered. A notion was even considered as a notion to be. So, basically, in 1990, but 1986, around between 84 and 87 and somewhat 88, all syndicated stations like KTVU Channel 2 had an after-school block, which you could pretty much call the toy block, or the Hasbro block, if you will. Yeah, between those time frames, mostly 84 to about 88, you had what was known as the Hasbro block. And what do I mean? I mean by the fact that you had 2 hours, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is some of the things I remember clearly as a kid. You had 2 hours worth of Hasbro programming, of shows based on toys and franchises. I remember you had My Little Pony. Then you had Gem. Then you had Transformers. Then you had G.I. Joe. And, just like Disney Afternoon or any after-school block, they would mix it up. Now, unlike Disney Afternoon, they never took the older one show off and replaced it with another. No. Instead, like I said, like other blocks, they would mix up the time slots. So at times, you would have G.I. Joe at 3:30, and you would have maybe Gem rounding everything up at 4:30. Or you would have Transformers at 4:30, Gem at 4, G.I. Joe at 3, Pony at 3:30, whatever. Or it'd be it'd be My Little Pony, Gem, Transformers, G.I. Joe. You just basically you get the same shows, but at times the blocks would be, the time slots would be switched. So, anyway, I remember watching in 1986 during these blocks, because the 2 shows I would watch the most two shows I would watch the most was Transformers and G.I. Joe. And yeah, I'd watch Gem at times. Let's say if it was raining outside or there was nothing else on, which was kind of ironic because the other KBHK, as it was known back then, had some shows as well. But I remember I would watch Transformers and G.I. Joe the most because they were back to back, no matter, like I said, what the time slot was. And I would watch them. Those would be the only ones I would watch. And then, of course, like I said, if nothing else was on, I would watch Gem. And of course, I would probably watch the whole 2 hours with my sisters. I would watch my shows, they would watch their shows, and I'd watch it with them. No doubt about that. But the point is, it was during this block, and mostly at times during Transformers, at times during G.I. Joe, and at times during Gem and My Little Pony, that they would bring out advertisements for Transformers, the movie. And I remember it was during Transformers that the advertisements started to show up at first, and then, like I said, they would be scattered about during the Hasbro block, as I would call it. Sometimes even, they'd be scattered even throughout other portions of the day of other kids' shows, even on other stations. But they were mostly shown during the Hasbro 2-hour block, and mostly, like I say, around Transformers, and sometimes during the commercial times of Pony and Gem and G.I. Joe, they would show them as well. And I remember watching this, and I was just shocked. I was surprised. I was shocked, surprised, and happy. And I wanted my mom, my dad to take me to go see it. I remember just jumping up and down going, Mom, look. You know, because I couldn't believe it. He was my favorite show as a kid. Then my mom basically said they had no choice but to plop me up and plop me in front of, because, well, being 5 years old at the time when it came out in '84 and going up to '88, there wasn't much of playing outside as you can imagine. I mean, I could play in the backyard and everything, but as far as, you know, anything else, you know, you couldn't play outside because we lived in apartments and there was nothing but asphalt outside. So, and also the fact I was kind of 5 years old, 6 years old, 7, and at the time I still didn't know much. I mean, I knew much, but I still didn't know any better than what I do now. Or as I started to as I got older. But, point is, my mom didn't want to take any chances. My mom and dad didn't want to take any chances with me getting hurt or injured or whatever. So basically, I wanted to go see the movie. And anytime we would drive by the Union City Drive-In, because we would go to Fremont Community Church, they would always have this big Union City. For anybody that knows what I'm talking about, that lives in the Bay Area, there was this big thing on the outside that would say Union City Drive-In, and would show all the movies that were being shown. And I think once or twice we would drive by there after the movie came out, and one of those things would say on it, Transformers the movie. And I wanted to go see it. I wanted to see it. But I could not. I could not because, one, yes, it was PG, but this was at a time that, even though PG nowadays means, hey, you got to be 7 or older to go see it on your own, back then PG was more along the lines of, unless you're 7 or mostly a little older, like say 10 years old, you got to be accompanied by an adult. So, yeah. Even though I wanted to see it, my mom and dad never took me to see it. I think, one, because perhaps, I don't know who, either my mom or my dad or both, found out from friends and co-workers that it was a violent movie, that it was different than what we saw on television. I don't know. So I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it until it came out to video. And from what I understand, a lot of people but from what I understand, a lot of people, a lot of fans, didn't get a chance to see it until it came out to VHS and even Laserdisc. Which is a shame. Because I would have loved nothing more than to experience on the big screen. I mean, there are a few movies that I've seen throughout my life based on shows and stuff that I used to see as a kid, and I saw them on the big screen. I saw DuckTales the movie in theaters. I did. I saw Recess School's Out. What does that tell you? The point is, I always wanted to see this in theaters and never had the chance to. But I do remember about a year or so, about a few months later, about I think 6 months later, we went into neighborhood video, and this is at a time that even still, in some of the other mom and pop stores that are still around, this was at a time where you didn't just have the posters of what movies were coming to VHS, but you also had big white boards that they would use, and they would write down in one section in one color what was a new release, and on the other side, and then they would draw a line down in another color down the middle, and in another color, because they would use like 3 different colors, they would write down what was coming soon. And I remember looking to the side of a wall, I believe, in the store, because it was neighborhood video in Hayward. I remember looking, and I think it was on the wall or somewhere in the store, I saw a poster for Transformers the movie. And then I looked up at the white board, and in the coming soon section it said Transformers, the movie. So I asked my mom and dad if they could reserve it the day it comes out, for the day it comes out so we could see it. And they did. I think I had to be good or something, I can't remember. But they reserved it. They called up Neighborhood Video, got it reserved, brought it home. And after dinner, we all sat down at the couch, while I laid down on the floor with my big gray pillow, and we watched the movie. And I can tell you, my mom and my dad, I think even my sister was a little shocked how violent it was. And yes, I will admit, I think I did cry a little bit when Prime died. I put my head in my gray pillow or something. I just hid my head with my gray pillow because I didn't want to see Prime die. But I've seen it so many times now, I've come to expect it, I've come to accept it. And I think, growing up, I look back on it now and think, yeah, as a kid, it's hard, it's sad to see Prime die in this movie, but it's what made the film. It's exactly what a lot of people have said. Fans and people that worked on the film have said. It's what made it as iconic as it is. It's what gave it its following even to this day. It gave it its following. And I can remember watching it. Then, of course, I think this was at a time we only had like a day rental or 2-day rental or something. And we had to go return it the next day or two, the day or two after. But I remember watching it, and I did enjoy it. But as a kid back then, like I said, looking back on it, being a kid, you just didn't want to see Prime die. But again, as I mentioned, and I know I sound like a broken record for using that word, as I got older and I would watch it more and more, I came to accept it and just be like another part of the movie, because I pretty much know, growing up with the series, growing up with the franchise, Prime comes back, And it's like in every other incarnation, unless it's the finale of a certain incarnation of Transformers, Prime lives. Prime survives. I mean, pretty much if you take a look at the end of the Beast Wars, Beast Machines era of Transformers, the way it ended, yeah, you could accept it because that part of the Transformer franchise was over. It was officially done. You know, you take a look at recently at Transformers Prime and the way it ended with the Predacons Rising movie. You can accept that because pretty much the series was done. It's over. You know, so to me, it's just become another part of the movie, and I've come to accept that. Just like a lot of fans out there have come to accept it. Yeah, is it still sad that, you have to watch, when you watch the movie, to see him die? Yeah, of course, but the thing is you come to expect that to happen in the movie. You come to expect it. You come to expect it as a part of the film and come to respect the fact that it's what made the film what it is. But anyway, I remember we were watching, I think, once or twice before we returned. I think 2 times, I think. The first time with my family and then the second time before we returned it back to Neighborhood Video. And then every time we'd be at a video store, I'd want to get it again and again. I want to rent it again if it was there, and I would. And my parents would let me, and I'd want to watch it again. Anytime I would rent the video, I'd watch it again and again and again and again. I would do that. I remember even one time and this is very embarrassing to talk about. I remember a few years later, we lived in Fremont. I went with a neighbor and my friend and I went with one of my friends and his mom to K Video. And yeah, this is what they would call it. It was called K Video in Fremont. And I saw Transformers there. And and again, such an embarrassing moment. I can't even believe it. I look back at this and I'm thinking to myself, I cannot believe I did this. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that has these embarrassing moments, but to me, I'm like, I can't believe I did this. And I still think, and I'm thinking about it, it's like, I can't believe I did it. But I freaking threw a damn tantrum. Yeah. This was like when I was like 8 or 9 years old. I threw a freaking tantrum, and his mom, I guess out of sympathy or something, or just don't want to be embarrassed, said, let him get the movie. Let him get the movie. And they let me get it. And again, just thinking about it, I'm like, what was I thinking? What was wrong with me at the time? Well, of course, I was a kid, so there you go. And of course, being homeschooled, I was being homeschooled from between being homeschooled up to the age of 6 or 7. Because yeah, get this, I didn't start kindergarten until about 6.5, 7 years old. How's that? But yeah, because I was homeschooled for a few years by my mom. I wasn't around any other kids at school until about 6.5, 7 years old. So, had I not been homeschooled and automatically put into school, maybe I wouldn't have done that. But then again, God, as my family would always tell me, God has a reason for things working out the way they do. And He did. But, again, it's like, just thinking about that, it's like, that is so embarrassing, what I did. And the reason I remember it is because it's one of those moments you never forget. Even as embarrassing, as stupid as it was. And as, of course, being a kid, as immature as it was. So it was, to me, it was just stupid. It was just stupid and embarrassing. Like I said, it's one of those moments that even though, even though it's embarrassing, it's one that you can't forget. But I I know people watching this video have had similar moments, and you can't deny that. You cannot deny that you've had similar moments. You cannot deny that you've had similar moments throughout your childhood. You can't deny that. But point is, they were kind enough, I guess I could say out of embarrassment or out of sympathy or something, to let me rent the movie, to rent the movie for me. But of course I had to return it to them a day or two later because the movies, it was due at the same time as them. It was due at the same time the movies were. So, yeah. And like I say, it was so embarrassing, so stupid. And if any of them are watching, I apologize for that many years ago. That was like over 20, God, what was it now? Going like on 26, 27 years ago. It was so embarrassing, and I apologize to those, apologize to them if they're watching, because oh my God. But when I also look back at it, I kind of laugh at it because it shows you the impact that this movie had on me. It shows you how much I loved watching this movie. And I was willing to do anything, and even as a kid, it have such an even looking back at it as a kid, have such an embarrassing moment to get it. You know, to get this movie. But thankfully, that was the last time I would ever do something like that, because as we still lived in Fremont on Tamayo Street, I remember, I can recall, I should say, that KBHK, they started airing Transformers. They basically gotten the rights to air Transformers in syndication. And they started airing like the final season or so of Transformers, which was, I guess you could say, a best of season. And because this was at a time when they had this, not animatronic, but this kind of stop motion puppet like Master Optimus Prime and this young guy called Timothy, or Tommy, whatever. And I remember watching this, and I was just like, you know, I remember watching this season, watching this episodes that were on there, and sometimes they would just air, like I say, the miniseries, like More Than Meets the Eye, Ultimate Doom, Five Faces of Darkness, Return of Optimus Prime, you know, Megatron's Master Plan, things like that, and even Rebirth. They would show them all. But the one thing that they would show most times in multiple parts was Transformers the movie. Yeah. About 2.5, 3 years after it came out in theaters, it had become basically a 5-part miniseries they would air as the best of season. But then there were times that they would take the whole 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. block, and instead of showing other shows like they would do on a regular basis, because they would have like Transformers, I think at 9, and then some other shows afterwards, they would take the whole block. They would take the whole block from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and they would show the entire Transformer movie. Yeah. They would air the entire Transformer movie. They would not, you know, chop it up into parts. They wouldn't go like, okay, here's part 1 at 9, part 2, blah, 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 blah. No, they would show the entire thing in its entirety. Of course, it was the version that we got from Family Home Entertainment, you know, at the time when there was no swear word, no shit word in the movie. And I think to clean it up even more, they took out the damn word. Yeah. So it was basically the shit word swearing and damn word swearing version of Transformers the movie. So yeah, they took those out. So like I said, to clean it up, because it was also, of course, it was also the morning, they took out the word damn, because it was being aired on Saturday mornings, like I say, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. They basically use that whole block to do it. And I remember watching it a couple of times when it would do that. They would do that. I remember that we lived in Waterford. They did that. I remember, again, going back to before we moved to Waterford, they did that. And in that 1 year they did it, we were still living in Fremont. My mom said, hey, if you do good in school, you don't, if you do good in school and whatever, I can't remember what else she said, but basically she said if I did good in school, that for that week I could not only watch the movie, but record it. And that's exactly what I did. And I still have that tape, but it's in Kansas. Yeah, it's stored away in a box in Kansas in one of my former rooms where my dad lives. I still have it, but it's in Kansas. Yeah, it's probably the oldest tape my family has from back then. But the point is, I finally did own, in a sense, Transformers the movie. Even though I didn't get it from the very beginning, I still owned it. So, and I also was able to record the Touch music video with it, so that was a plus. Because that was the one thing I remember Prime would always do at the end of these things. He would tell Tommy he's got to go back, but he leaves him with the Touch. And on comes the Touch music video. And speaking of that, that was one thing that when the movie came out to theaters, or was coming to theaters, I remember my mom tuned into MTV one day because, she would watch it at times, even though it was mostly music videos. I remember one time she tuned into it and she said she saw the Touch music video she saw the Touch music video come on. And I was in my room, I think I was playing with some of my toys. She said, Brian, come here. So I would go in there, and she said, take a look at this. And I would go in, and then I would see, and I would see the Touch music video. And when she told me that the first time I saw it, and she told me something similar to that the first time I saw it. She said, Brian, come here, take a look at this. So I went in there. So I remember that day she told me for the first, I remember she told me that the day I first saw it, I went in there and I was like, well, what is it? And being a kid, I was like, what is it? So I go in, and there's Transformers the movie on MTV, but in music video form with Stan Bush singing. So I was happy because at least I was getting to look at what Transformers the movie was like, even though it was a music video. And then I remember, like I said, and again, going back to what I was saying earlier, I remember the day, that Saturday, I got to record it finally on VHS and finally get to own it in some way. They played the video afterwards. So to me, I basically now owned the movie, in a sense, as well as the music video. I now was in possession of both of them. And that was pretty cool. And throughout the year, throughout the years of owning the VHS, I would put it on, watch it as much as I can, or watch bits and pieces here and there. And I would still try to, keep in touch with it. I even remember my cousin